The night Sheriff Dale Whitcomb drove out to my cornfield to investigate the lights I'd reported, he radioed dispatch once. He said 3 words, "I see it too," and then static swallowed the rest. That was 4 years ago. His cruiser is still parked at the edge of my property. Nobody in this county will move it. And every October, when the corn grows tall enough to hide a man standing upright, the lights come back. My name is Naomi Whitlock, and I've farmed the same 200 acres in Boone County, Nebraska, that my grandfather cleared with a mule and a plow in 1952. Folks around here trust me. I chair the County Grange Hall Committee. I've never missed a Sunday at First Lutheran. And when the Petersons lost their barn to a lightning strike 2 winters back, I was the one who organized the rebuild. I tell you this not to boast, but because you need to understand something before this story goes where it's going. I am not the kind of woman who imagines things. I do not chase ghosts. I called the sheriff's department that first night because I believed, with everything in me, that I was witnessing something a badge and a flashlight could explain. I was wrong. Before I take you into that cornfield with me, I want to ask you something. While you're watching this, drop a comment and tell me what city or country you're tuning in from tonight. I read every single one, and there's something about knowing exactly where this story is landing in the world that keeps me writing these down. And if this is your first time here, hit subscribe, because what happened after Sheriff Whitcomb's cruiser went silent is going to follow this town for a long, long time. And I'm going to tell you every part of it. Give this video a like if you're the kind of person who needs to know how a story ends, even when part of you wishes you didn't. It started on a Tuesday in late September, 3 weeks before harvest. I was up past midnight checking on a sick heifer in the east barn when I saw them for the first time. Pale amber lights, low over the corn, moving in a pattern too deliberate to be swamp gas or headlights on the county road. They didn't flicker like fire. They pulsed, slow and rhythmic, almost like something breathing. I stood in my barn doorway for 11 minutes. I counted, because counting is what you do when your mind is trying to convince your body it's safe. Before I picked up the phone, Sheriff Dale Whitcomb had known my family for 30 years. He'd bought sweet corn from my grandfather's stand every August since he was a deputy. When I called him that night, he didn't laugh, and he didn't tell me to go back to bed. He said, "Naomi, stay inside. I'm coming out myself." That should have comforted me. Instead, something in his voice, a tightness, like he already knew more than he was saying, made my stomach turn cold in a way the September night air had nothing to do with. His cruiser pulled into my drive at 1:47 in the morning. I watched from my kitchen window as his headlights swept across the porch and then across the cornfield beyond it, catching that same pulsing amber glow drifting between the rows. He radioed dispatch. I heard his voice crack through my scanner, low and disbelieving. "I see it too." Then the static came. Not silence, but a thick, deliberate static, like something was pressing down on the frequency itself. I never heard his voice again. The search began at dawn, less than 5 hours after Sheriff Whitcomb's radio went dead. Deputy Marcus Reyes led it, a stocky, careful man who'd worked under Whitcomb for 11 years and treated him less like a boss and more like an uncle. By 7 that morning, there were 14 vehicles lined up along the county road, bordering my property, state troopers, volunteer firefighters, 2 K-9 units from the neighboring county, and half the men from the Grange Hall Committee. Men I'd sat across from at potlucks for 20 years. I walked the search line myself. I know every furrow of that cornfield, every low patch where the drainage pulls after rain, every place a man could stumble in the dark. I told Deputy Reyes this, and he nodded and let me walk beside him. And for the first 3 hours, that felt like the natural order of things. A woman helping her neighbors find a good man who'd gotten lost. Then around 10 in the morning, something changed. A black SUV I didn't recognize pulled up beside the cruiser, and 2 men in plain suits stepped out. Not sheriff's department, not state police, nothing with a visible badge or insignia I could place. They spoke to Deputy Reyes alone, off to the side, for almost 20 minutes. When he came back, his face had the particular stillness of a man who'd just been told something he didn't like and couldn't repeat. He didn't meet my eyes. Within the hour, the search area had shrunk. What had been a wide sweep through my entire 200 acres was suddenly narrowed to a tight perimeter around the cruiser itself. No more than 50 yards in any direction. When I asked why, one of the state troopers, a young man named Kowalski, who I don't think had learned yet how to lie convincingly, told me it was a resource allocation decision. I have run a farm through droughts, through a husband's cancer, through 3 different bank refinancings. I know what people sound like when they're repeating a sentence someone else gave them. By that evening, the search was called off entirely. 12 hours for a decorated sheriff with 30 years of service, missing from a cornfield he'd driven into himself. I said as much to Deputy Reyes as he was packing up his truck, and he wouldn't argue with me. He just looked past my shoulder, out toward the rows of corn going gold in the sunset, and said, "Naomi, some things out here are older than the department's jurisdiction." Then he got in his truck and drove away, and he has not returned one phone call from me since. Over the following week, I noticed something else. Every person who'd been out there that first morning, Reyes, Kowalski, even old Harlan Voss from the Grange Hall, started finding reasons not to look at me directly when I brought up the lights, or the search, or Dale's name. It wasn't cruelty. It was something closer to fear wearing the mask of politeness. And 2 nights after the search ended, when I stood again in my barn doorway at midnight, the amber lights returned to the cornfield, closer to the house than before, and pulsing in a rhythm I could have sworn matched, beat for beat, my own frightened heartbeat. It took me 9 days to find them. I started with the SUV itself. I'd caught the last 3 digits of the plate before it pulled away that morning, scrawled them on the back of a feed receipt with a shaking hand, and nearly forgotten about it until I found the receipt again, folded into my Bible. I called in a favor from my nephew, who works dispatch 2 counties over, and asked him quietly to run what he could without putting his job on the line. What came back wasn't a name. It was a flag, a federal vehicle registration tied to something called the Division of Land and Atmospheric Assessment, an agency I had never heard of in 61 years of living in this state, and one that, as far as I could find in any public directory, did not officially exist. That should have frightened me into stopping. Instead, it made me angrier than I've been since my husband's diagnosis. I drove 40 minutes to the county seat and sat in the courthouse parking lot for 2 hours, because I remember Deputy Reyes mentioning once, months before any of this began, that federal vehicles passing through Boone County had to log through the county assessor's easement office if they crossed private agricultural land, some leftover regulation from the aquifer disputes of the 80s. The clerk, a woman named Patty, who I've known since her wedding, was reluctant, but she owed my late husband a debt from years back that she's never forgotten, and she pulled the log. 2 entries, both from the same 2 men, both listing their destination as my property, and both dated. This is the part that stopped my breath in my chest. 11 days before I ever called Sheriff Whitcomb about the lights. They had been here before I ever saw a single thing in that cornfield, before Dale Whitcomb's radio ever went silent. Someone, or something, had already flagged my 200 acres for assessment, and whatever they were assessing had arrived on my land before the lights ever did. I confronted them 3 days later. I recognized the SUV parked at the diner just off Route 14, and I walked straight up to the booth where they sat. And I did not raise my voice because my mother raised me not to make a scene. But I made my intentions very clear. I asked them what the Division of Land and Atmospheric Assessment does. I asked them why they'd logged an easement entry onto my property before I ever reported anything unusual. I asked them where Dale Whitcomb was, the older of the 2 men, silver-haired, unbothered, with eyes that had clearly delivered bad news to 100 people before me. Set down his coffee and said, "Mrs. Whitlock, I understand this is distressing, but I need you to understand something in return. Whatever you saw in that field wasn't the first time it's happened there, and it wasn't going to be the last, regardless of whether you called anyone." Then he slid a business card across the table, no name, only a phone number, and said, "If the lights come back stronger, call this number before you call anyone local. For your own sake, and for anyone else's who might come out to help you." I have not called that number, not yet, but I have started digging through every box in my grandfather's attic, because if this has happened here before, then somewhere on this land, someone already wrote it down. The attic of my grandfather's house hadn't been fully searched in decades. Not really searched the way you search when you're looking for something specific instead of just clearing clutter for an estate sale. I spent 3 nights up there with a battery lantern and my late husband's old tool belt full of screwdrivers for the trunk locks that had rusted shut, working through steamer trunks of harness leather, ration books from the war, and my grandmother's canning jars packed in straw. On the 3rd night, in a trunk pushed into the far eave where the roofline slopes too low to stand, I found 4 leather-bound journals tied together with twine and a manila folder stamped in faded government ink, "Confidential. Department of Agriculture, Land Use Division, 1961. My grandfather was not a man given to fear. He'd survived a threshing accident that took 2 fingers off his left hand and never once complained about it in front of me. But the handwriting in that 4th journal, dated September through November of 1961, changed halfway through. The careful, upright script of a disciplined farmer degrading, entry by entry, into something looser and more frantic. The letters pressed hard enough into some pages to tear the paper. He wrote of lights. The same amber, the same slow pulse, the same location, the northeast quarter of the cornfield, the exact stretch where Dale Whitcomb's cruiser still sits rusting today. He wrote that he'd reported it to the county sheriff of that era, a man named Otto Bergstrom, and that Bergstrom had gone out to investigate personally, alone, on the night of October 3rd, 1961. My grandfather's entry from October 4th read only, "Otto's car is here, Otto is not. Men came before sunrise, said federal business, said not to speak of it. I will not speak of it. God forgive me, I will not speak of it." The manila folder contained the rest. Correspondence between my grandfather and the same agency I'd already encountered 60 years later. The Division of Land and Atmospheric Assessment, its letterhead identical down to the eagle insignia, as though 6 decades had passed without a single change to its stationery. A settlement letter offering my grandfather what would have been, in 1961, a genuinely life-changing sum of money in exchange for his signature on a document titled Acknowledgement of Non-Disclosure, Land Use Anomaly. He signed it. I found his signature at the bottom, shaking but legible, dated November 12, 1961. Sheriff Otto Bergstrom's body was never found. The county recorded his death as a drowning in the Elkhorn River, 11 miles from where his cruiser had been parked. My grandfather's journal, in its final entry, called that explanation a lie we all agreed to believe so we could keep sleeping in our own beds. I sat in that attic until the lantern burned down to almost nothing, and I understood with a cold and total clarity that I was not the first Whitlock to invite a good sheriff into that cornfield and watch him vanish. I was not even the first to be offered money for my silence. My grandfather took the money and the silence and lived another 31 years on this land, and never once, in all my childhood summers here, told me why the northeast quarter of the field always made him go quiet and short-tempered every October. Whatever is out there, it does not simply visit. It returns. It has a pattern, and it has been running that pattern on this exact soil for at least 65 years. And every single time, it has taken the man who came closest to understanding it. I am not a mathematician. I did 4 years of bookkeeping for this farm and balanced every harvest ledger my husband and I ever kept. And that is the extent of my gift for numbers. But grief and fear make you resourceful in ways nothing else does. And so I spent 2 full days at my kitchen table with both journals, the manila folder, and every newspaper clipping I could find at the county library, laying out dates like a woman piecing together a quilt pattern she didn't want to see finished. Otto Bergstrom vanished October 3rd, 1961. I dug further back, further than my grandfather's journal went, and found a brittle microfilm article from the Boone County Argus. A hired hand named Elmer Kastner, employed on this same parcel of land before my grandfather even purchased it, went missing October 6, 1937, after neighbors reported strange fires floating over the corn. 24 years between Kastner and Bergstrom. I kept going. A land surveyor named Whitfield Cross, contracted by the county to reassess irrigation boundaries, disappeared October 9, 1913 in the same field after filing a report describing luminous orbs of unknown origin. 24 years again, near enough that a farmer's memory or a county clerk's imprecise dating could account for the difference. 24 years each time, like clockwork, and each time in the first 2 weeks of October, when the corn stands at its fullest height and the nights turn cold enough to see your breath. I did the arithmetic with a pencil that trembled harder than my grandfather's had in his final journal entry. 1961 plus 24 is 1985. I found nothing that year. No disappearance, no article, nothing in the county record. For a moment, sitting there, I let myself believe the pattern had broken, that whatever this was had simply stopped. Then I remembered something my late husband told me once. In the offhand way you mention a piece of family trivia you never think twice about. That in 1985, the year we married, an insurance adjuster came out to assess storm damage to the east barn and never filed his paperwork. The company sent a replacement 2 weeks later, and everyone assumed the first man had simply quit without notice, moved on to another job, the way men sometimes did back then. No search, no article, no body, just a man who came out to our land in October of 1985 and never went home. 24 years after that is 2009. And I remembered with a chill that dropped straight through my chest. A young game warden named Pete Sorensen, who'd come out that autumn to investigate reports of a dead deer near my property line, and whose truck was later found abandoned on the county road. The case quietly filed as a transfer request to a warden station 3 states away. Nobody in Boone County ever saw him again either. 24 years after 2009 is 2033. I am writing this to you 7 years before that date, and I want you to sit with that the way I have had to sit with it. Whatever came for Whitcomb did not come on its own schedule. It came 4 years early. Something has changed. The pattern that held for over a century, precise enough to set a clock by, has broken. And I don't know if that means it's finished with this land, or if it means something is coming back sooner and hungrier than it ever has before. I called the number on the 3rd night after I finished my calculations, sitting at my kitchen table with my husband's old service revolver within reach. Not because I believed it would help against whatever this was, but because a woman alone on 200 acres learns to keep something within reach regardless. The line rang twice. A woman answered, not the silver-haired man from the diner, her voice flat and professional in a way that told me she'd had this exact conversation before, with other frightened landowners in other counties, under other cornfields. I told her my name. I told her what I'd found. The 24-year pattern, the 4 missing men before Whitcomb, the 2 silent disappearances my husband and the county records had nearly let slip past unnoticed. There was a long pause on her end, long enough that I wondered if she'd hung up. Then she said, "Mrs. Whitlock, I'm going to tell you more than I'm authorized to because you've done more digging than most people we deal with, and I respect that. What's under your land isn't ours. It never was. Our division doesn't create it, and we can't stop it. Our job is containment and silence, and for 65 years, that's mostly worked. The interval shortening isn't something we've seen before. It concerns us too." I asked her point blank whether Dale Whitcomb was alive. She said, "I don't know. I can tell you that in every prior instance, the site itself has provided some form of resolution, usually within a year. I would ask you not to go looking for it yourself." Then she said something I have turned over in my mind every night since. "The lights don't take people at random, Mrs. Whitlock. They take the ones who get closest to understanding them. You should think very carefully about how much further you intend to go." The call ended there. I have not dialed that number again, and I don't intend to. 6 weeks after that call, on a bitter morning in late November, a hunter tracking a wounded deer along the drainage ditch on the eastern edge of my property found Dale Whitcomb sitting upright against a fence post, alive, disoriented, unable to account for a single day of the 4 years he'd been gone. His uniform intact, his weight and health unchanged, as though no time had passed for him at all, even as it had swallowed 4 full years from the rest of us. He does not remember the lights. He does not remember his own radio call. The last thing he recalls, he told me once, weeping in my own kitchen, is reaching the edge of my cornfield and feeling for one instant completely and perfectly at peace. I still farm this land. I still walk the northeast quarter of that cornfield every October, though I no longer do it after dark. Dale's cruiser remains where it stopped, because no tow company in 3 counties will touch it, and honestly, neither will I. Whatever moves through that soil every generation is patient, and it is not finished. And someday, maybe not in my lifetime, but someday, it will come early again, hungrier than before. When that day arrives, I hope whoever is standing in this field has read this story and knows enough to run. If this story kept you up tonight the way it kept me up for 4 long years, do me a kindness, hit like and subscribe to this channel, because there are more stories like this one waiting. True accounts from people who lived through the parts of rural America that don't make it into any tourist brochure. And before you go, tell me in the comments where in the world you watched this from tonight. I read every one, and it means more than you know to hear from you.